Yeah, that's a good song to sing tonight before this lesson. Let me get it open here. Ecclesiastes. Okay. There we go. I like to make this class exciting. The birds. Okay, come on. Whoa. Whew. Hit the pointer and it advanced slide. That's Brian Bird right there.
I wish I had that.
October 1st, 1965. The Birds, they called them a folk rock and roll group. They had just formed in 1964. They were a brand new group. And they released a song that made them famous. It was written by Pete Seeger. He wrote it in the late 50s. In 1962, a folk group called the Limelighters recorded it before Pete Seeger could record his own song. So the Limelighters recorded in 1962. A few months later, Pete Seeger, but in October 1st, 1965, the Birds recorded it, made them famous. Turn, turn, turn. It's an interesting song because it's one of the few hit rock and roll songs taken from Scripture. Ecclesiastes 3, verses 1 through 8, almost word for word, except he added turn, turn, turn. He wrote it very quickly. He was mad at his regular producer, and he was used to writing protest songs. And, he wrote this one. And as you read the words, the scripture comes out, to everything turn, 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 there's a season, turn, 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 and a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to weep. To everything turn, 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 there's a season, turn, 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 and a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to build up, a time to break down, a time to dance, a time to mourn, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together. To everything turn, 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 there's a season, turn, 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 and a time for every purpose under heaven. A time of love, a time of hate, a time of war, a time of peace, a time you may embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. To everything turn, 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 there's a season, turn, 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 and a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to gain, a time to lose, a time to rend, a time to sow, a time for love, a time for hate, a time for peace. I swear it's not too late. Probably if somebody asks you, tell me some passage from Ecclesiastes, you'd probably pull Ecclesiastes 3, there is a time, because we know it. In Hebrew, Kohelet, or sometimes it's, go back way in time. Remember when we started this study, how, bless you, how sometimes the Hebrew name for a book are the first words of the book. And so Genesis was Bereshit, in the beginning. Well, here, sometimes it's Divrei Kohelet, right? Divrei Kohelet. These are the words of Kohelet. Well, we'll talk about Kohelet in a little bit. In Greek, Ecclesiastes. I don't know if you remember Greek enough. You say, I don't know any Greek. Well, yeah, you do know some Greek, because there's the start of ecclesia. Well, there is ecclesia right there. That's ecclesia. And you've probably heard all your life, called out, called out. That's, if you take the prefix and the root, it is the called out, but it doesn't mean that, okay? It doesn't mean that. It means assembly. In the first century, ecclesia meant assembly. That's going to be very important in our study, I think, tonight. And then in Latin, in the Latin Vulgate, they just carried it from the Greek, the book of the assembly. Well, no. Ecclesiastes, I've tried to put as much as I could about this for you to read about this word for assembly and Ecclesiastes. And we're going to talk about it in just a minute, so hold on. Ecclesiastes is another one of those books that were read at the festivals. This one was read during Sukkot. That's the Feast of Tabernacles. Sukkah is the word for a temporary shelter or a booth, and the Feast of Tabernacles was commemorative of the wandering in the wilderness, of living in temporary shelters. And so Ecclesiastes was read during the Feast of the Tabernacles. I found this statement by Denny Petrillo. Some of you may recognize his name as a member of the church. But he wrote, oh yeah, and I gave you this. I meant to put it in last week's lesson. Here are the months of the year according to the Hebrew calendar. Here's our calendar. And then we talked about Purim with Esther occurring in February and March time frame. Passover we talked about, and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, March and April time frame. Pentecost is 50 days later. So it's May, June time frame. And down here is the Feast of Tabernacles, September, October time frame. Feast of Trumpets and Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. So it kind of puts you with a Jewish calendar and our modern calendar, if you're interested in wanting to just kind of understand when these feasts occur. But Petrillo wrote, over time it became a tradition for the Jews to read Ecclesiastes in their synagogues on the third day of the Feast of Tabernacles, or the Feast of Booths. This feast occurred in late September, early October, and commemorated the time when the Israelites were living in temporary dwellings after being brought out of the land of Egypt, Leviticus 23, verse 43. Using the book in this way demonstrated the value the Jews placed upon its teachings. Ecclesiastes is a beautiful book. And boy, if you hadn't read it lately, go home tonight and read it. I mean, there is so much in the book of Ecclesiastes. Kohelet. I don't know why I put things like this up there. But the lexicons, the Hebrew lexicons say it's the leader of the assembly. The leader of the assembly. Remember what we were talking about in Greek, Ecclesiastes, member of the assembly. In Hebrew, they come up with being the leader of the assembly, And so I'd say the majority of translations used to have preacher. They called him the preacher. Now some of the newer translations call him the teacher. And that may be a better title for it. We don't think of Solomon being a preacher. We think of him more as a philanderer than a preacher. He was an unusual guy, but Kohelet is the Hebrew word, and you see it 7 times in the book of Ecclesiastes, and it's in no other Jewish writings, scriptures, only in the book of Ecclesiastes. So they've kind of, through the years, debated what Kohelet meant, and that's probably the best, someone who addresses the assembly. So that could be a preacher, could be a teacher, someone who addresses the congregation or the leader of the congregation. As we look at Ecclesiastes, I'm going to jump around for just a minute, so try to keep up with me. Who wrote Ecclesiastes? They have debated this for centuries. My personal feeling, I think Solomon wrote it. It's been in the English canon and in the Jewish canon among the writings of Solomon between Proverbs and Song of Solomon for centuries, because the assumption was Solomon wrote this by both the Jewish scholars and those, the Greek in the Septuagint put it there. He's a descendant of David, according to the text. Who else? He labels himself a king in Jerusalem. But who had the money and the wisdom to investigate all the things he did? And I think only Solomon had those resources, had that inquisitiveness to look into matters. And if you look at Proverbs being written in his early years of wisdom, after he made so many mistakes in his old age, it makes sense that Ecclesiastes probably came out from him. Probably a date of about 935 BC. Some people think it was later, that it was more in the Persian period, time of Ezra, 450 BC. Don't know. I still think Solomon was the author. That's just my opinion, but it's shared by very many people. And the date would be near the end of his life. He reigned till supposedly about 931 BC, so 935 BC would work pretty well. I don't know that anybody's going to come to a very good conclusion on that anytime soon, but I think Solomon is a good choice. Anybody got any questions before we go on? Okay. I love these little things. They're pretty neat, but I didn't change the slide, but I'll talk to it in a minute. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. You can't read Ecclesiastes without talking about the term vanity. And here, when it says the key term is vanity, it means uselessness or absurdity. The Hebrew term, I want to say hebel. It's hebel or hebel, if you're from the South, I guess. It meant breath or vapor. It referred to something without meaning or something absurd or useless, rather than conceit or self-admiration as vanity implies today. The term occurs more than 30 times in the book, but only once elsewhere in the Bible. And whoever wrote this blew it, because the word Hebel occurs 73 times in the Old Testament. It appears 38 times in the book of Ecclesiastes. Another thing that's interesting about Hebel, that's the name of Abel in Genesis, written the very same way, but that's the name Abel in Genesis is Hebel. And the summary: although human beings can accumulate many things, accomplish much, and achieve great wisdom, these are without profit and ultimately pointless unless one has lived in fear and obedience to God. And that's the conclusion that the writer comes to. The words of the preacher Kohelet, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. The Septuagint, some copies of the Septuagint actually put Solomon in that line. They decided, for whatever reason, I don't know how they got it out of the text, but they concluded that it was Solomon, and so they put it in there. And then Hebel, vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Hebel. Why did I put all of that up there? Well, remember we talked about Song of Songs. Paul said, I'm a Hebrew of the Hebrews. It means I'm the most Hebrew person. This is the greatest song of all, Song of Solomon. Vanity, the greatest level of vanity there is. Vanity of vanities. You can't get any more vain than this, is what the writer is trying to get across. All is vanity. And here's one particular outline where they have a prologue and an epilogue, and then they say, well, he sought happiness and wisdom, in riches and royal living, and prominence, power, and prestige, happiness in earthly forbidden pleasure. He did all of the things. I'm not saying we try all of these things, but at some point in our life, we try to make it in some form or fashion. You decide on a career. You want to make enough money to be comfortable, or you may want to become rich. We all go through some kind of process of, what am I going to do in life? Am I going to get my education? Am I going to try to make as much money as I can? I want to be the best real estate salesman there ever was. We come to some conclusion of what we're going to do in life. All of us did that. Uncle Sam didn't give me much choice. I was going to be an accountant, CPA. That's what I studied for 4.5 years. Uncle Sam had the Vietnam War. I guess I could have joined Pete Seeger and sung protest songs. He had other ideas for me. And so I had to shift my goals in life to something else. But the point is, all of us go through some process as we go through life of goals and aspirations and dreams, and that's just what we become. It's surviving in a world because we have to eat. At least I always felt like I need to eat. I need to work and earn money so I could eat and wear clothes. And then when I got married, to support a wife and children, and so we do all those things, don't we? Solomon, he did all of those things and more in earthly forbidden pleasures, but he finally came to the conclusion, well, let's just keep going. I like this one. This was pretty neat. What you have to do is go down and without God, all is vanity. He went to the end of the book, figured out what it was, and so he goes back in the front. He said, without God, all is vanity. And whether it's in learning, in work, whatever it is, this is what happens without God. And so you can go through these passages, and you might agree with him in his conclusion, maybe not. I don't know. Some of them are a stretch. But then you get down to the end. The beginning of wisdom is the fear of God, and that is a deeply serious attitude toward the commands of God. True? True. You can't fear God, really fear God, and not come to this attitude that you've got to obey what he says. So he says, when you have this godly fear, then you'll get fulfillment in life. That's the only way you're going to get it. It's not by chasing all those other pursuits. And then here's a topical outline, and I put that in there to go with all the words on page 6. Where he talks about the purpose and the message and the purpose. People try a lot of different things. Materialism. The richest people in the world are not the happiest people. You ever observed that? Some of the happiest people I have ever been in their homes are dirt poor. They were dirt poor, and they were the happiest people I ever ran into. You can make a lot of money, you can have a lot of stuff, but you're going to have other worries. You're going to have other problems, other worries. And so I like this topical outline because we're not having good luck with this thing tonight. I don't know what's happening to it. Okay, there's the red dot. He covers all these things that people pursue and makes comments on it. And I thought that was a good little outline to follow. Now, let's see, I want to go back a minute. In chapter 3, I think it's this one right here, godless eternity. In Ecclesiastes 3, verse 11, it's a very important verse. When we're talking about these pursuits, trying to find the meaning of life, the wise man put something here that I think means a lot. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, he has put eternity in their hearts. As you look around the world, most cultures have some concept of life beyond the grave. The Egyptians mummified cats and put all kinds of stuff in their tombs with them. They look to a day when these objects that they put in a tomb would be a part of their life again in the afterlife. And most every culture does that. We being Christians, we believe in eternity, don't we? But somewhere in the innermost being of all humans is this longing for something more than this earthly existence. I think this verse says that. Now, I don't know if you've ever thought about this. This is something we learned in grade school, in science class. Have you ever thought about that? All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. To the place from which the rivers come, there they return again. The cycle of evaporation and rain. Solomon had it figured out a long time ago. I just think that's pretty neat. When we talk about all the things he investigated from other places when the Queen of Sheba went to see him, Warren Wiersbe tells a story in his commentary on Proverbs. In the introduction, he wrote, "My friend Dr. Bob Cook, now home with the Lord, told me that he started reading Proverbs regularly when he was just a boy." Excuse me. There are 31 chapters in Proverbs, so if you read a chapter a day, you can read the book through once a month. Bob's father promised to give him $1 every time he faithfully finished reading the book. So every year, Bob gained spiritual treasure and earned $12 just by reading Proverbs. That stuck in my mind as a good thing. All of our children need to read Proverbs growing up multiple times. We adults need to read it too, but young people need to read it. But Ecclesiastes just as much so. I think as we get older, Ecclesiastes becomes our Proverbs. We start to understand life more, and Ecclesiastes means more as we read it. And I think Ecclesiastes is something we adults need to read over and over again. There's just so much to put our feet back on the ground. Now, I tried to go, we can't cover all these, but we'll go as fast as we can. I tried to pull out something from every chapter. I couldn't pull everything out. I've already pulled chapter 3, verses 1 through 8. We've already done that. That's a nugget that comes out of Ecclesiastes, but I tried to go to each chapter and find something we could talk about. That which is been is what will be, that which is done is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun. That is so true of human behavior and human aspirations and thinking. There's nothing new under the sun. Now, a cell phone, that's something that's come about in our lifetime, hadn't it? I remember the first mobile phones in the military, we called them bricks. I mean, those Motorola things were big old, like the World War II walkie-talkies almost. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about human behavior, the way we look at life. There's nothing new under the sun. There isn't. Yes, Brian?
So even the technology, the physics that make the technology work, we're already there.
We're already there.
Just discovered it.
Yeah. Yeah. Man has made discoveries, but just like Solomon, I don't know who wrote the textbook on the evaporation cycle. He did it a long time ago. Chapter 2, then I hated all my labor in which I had toiled under the sun, because I must leave it to the man who will come after me. We need to realize that. I've got some stuff I've collected through the years. I don't know if any of my children want it. I don't know. But everything I've done, I'm going to leave to somebody else. And everything you've accumulated, you're going to leave to somebody else. They may take care of it, and they may put it in a yard sale. That's just the way life is. So why should I worry about accumulating stuff if I'm going to leave it to somebody that's going to put it in a yard sale? Duh. Chapter 3, what do we pull out? We've already pulled out 1 through 8. We pulled out verse 11. For what happens to the sons of men also happens to animals. One thing befalls them, as one dies, so dies the other. Surely they all have one breath. Man has no advantage over animals, for all is vanity. Well, that's not totally true. But the one thing that is true, like animals, we're all going to die. Unless the Lord comes first, all of us in this room, we don't like to think about it, but we're going to die. And I'm going to tell you, as you get older and older, as most of you know, you're getting older, your hair's changing to gray and white, and you know that day's coming. I read the obituaries every morning. I really like Woodfin's because they put the age of all the people, their birthday. I count how many are my age or younger. Today it was half and half. I kind of look at that. You got a 50% chance of making it through the day. I guess that's kind of sick, but I just think like that. Oh, chapter 4. I really like this passage from chapter 4. It's about friends. 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, one will lift up his companion. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he has no one to help him up. Again, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one be warm alone? Though one may be overpowered by another, 2 can withstand him, and a threefold cord is not broken. This is one, makes a good sermon. Keep thy feet, be careful. The New King James, walk prudently when you go to the house of God. Think we need to hear that message today? We need to hear it, folks. We need to hear this, church. Be careful when you go to the house of God, and draw near to hear rather than to give the sacrifice of fools, for they do not know that they do evil. Whew. I would go on, but we'll go to the next one. For who knows what is good for man in life, all the days of his vain life, which he passes like a shadow? Who can tell a man what will happen after him under the sun? What's going to happen when I'm dead and gone? The only thing I should worry about, and Solomon finally realized this, is where I'm going to spend eternity. Oh, I love this one. Better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for that is the end of all men, and the living will take it to heart. It's better to go to the funeral home. We need to hear this, church. We have gotten to where we don't go to the funeral homes like we used to. I'm not being ugly or mean. Just something I've observed through the years. We don't go, and COVID's really messed us up. Talking to somebody the other day who was weeping because when their dad died, it was right at the start of COVID, and they couldn't have a real visitation because they could only have 20 people, and their family was bigger than 20 people. And here was a grown man sitting there talking to us crying. I don't know, it may have been somebody here at the church, but I don't think it was. But here was a grown man crying because when his dad died, he could not honor him the way the man should have been honored. And better to go to the house of mourning than to go have a party. Because the sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily. Boy, our court system needs to read this one. Because the sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, therefore the heart of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil. Hey, I didn't make this up. Holy Spirit figured that one out. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with your might, for there is no work or device or knowledge or wisdom in the grave where you are going. Christians should be the best workers in the world. We should be the hardest workers there are. Now, Solomon said, you know, you can strive working all this and do all this. It's not going to get you anywhere. Well, it does. You still have to provide for your family. You still have to provide for your own needs. And so when you go to work, whatever it is, do it with all your might. Because one day, there's not going to be any working. This is kind of sickening. Dead flies putrefy the perfumer's ointment and cause it to give off a foul odor. So does a little folly to one respected for wisdom and honor. Well, one little mistake can wipe out all the good you've ever done. We need to be reminded of that. We all get tempted to do whatever. You can ruin your life. This is one I really like. Rejoice, O young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart and in the sight of your eyes, but know that for all these God will bring you into judgment. Young people, chase your dreams. Chase your dreams. Go where your heart takes you. Just make sure it's in the right direction. Because you are going to be brought into judgment. Walk in the ways of your heart. Pursue your dreams while you're young. Because as he starts chapter 12, he's going to tell you, you're going to get old. Your eyes are going to fail. Your hearing is going to go. Your heart ticker is going to give you problems. Isn't that right, Beulah? It does. No matter how we don't want it to do, it does. We get old, our body starts wearing out, and then we die. And that's what he says in chapter 12. So he tells the young people in chapter 11, look, pursue the ways of your heart while you're young. Rejoice, O man, in your youth. Because, and then he says, this is what's going to happen to you. You're going to lose your strength. You're not going to be able to sleep at night. Food's not going to taste so good. And some of us, we could give testimonials tonight about how those various things are already affecting us. Good, we got time to talk about this one. So let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments. And I want you to look at your translations of Scripture. For this is the Old King James, and I believe the ESV, is the whole duty of man. Duty is not in the text. I want you to hear this. Duty is not part of the text. It actually reads, this is the whole, this is the all of man. So what's the message? You can work, you can be a good worker, you can get a doctorate degree, you can have a great professional life, you can do all of these things. But it means nothing. The entirety of man is this: fear God and keep his commandments. That's That's all. That's it. There's no more. It's the all of man. That's the entirety of man. It's his reason for existence is to fear God and keep his commandments. I think that's a real important thing. And then, just in case you missed what he said, for God will bring every work into judgment, including every secret thing, whether good or evil. For we will all stand before the judgment seat of Christ and do the same thing. Give an account of everything we've ever done. Wow. Comments? Thank you for your attention this evening. Don't be depressed, because Solomon also said, the Holy Spirit also wants us to enjoy life, but fearing God and keeping his commandments. The two are not mutually exclusive. Sometimes we as Christians think, you can't do this, can't do that, can't do this, can't do that. No, no, no. There's all kinds of good things we as Christians can do. But fear God and keep his commandments while you're doing it. Thank you for being here this evening.